Please subscribe to this channel, so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 561. Supreme Intimidation. Xie Jinghong gave out 2 hollow laughs and began to speak. Your Excellency mustn't blame us ignorant people like this. We weren't aware that Your Excellency was here to keep a watch over the Jun family. And that's why this misunderstanding has occurred. Anyway, the 3 Holy Lands have a major responsibility on their shoulders. And I'm certain that Your Excellency is aware about this. The battle for seizing the heavens is scheduled to be fought in a few years from now. Everything will be normal if we win this war, but it would be disastrous if we lose it. In fact, our defeat would mean that the countless people of this continent will find themselves in danger. He paused for a moment. His expressions grew more solemn. Then, he continued, I'm afraid that no one will be able to bear such grave consequences. Everyone who has arrived here today will be participating in that fateful battle. And that's why we've come here to promote our strengths. After all, we need to guarantee our victory in the war. We had no other alternative but to plan things in this manner. The sufferings of one family are nothing in comparison to that of the entire world. It's no secret that these mysterious pills are unmatchable and unworldly. So, they are the solution to everything. After all, these pills are miraculous. Not only can these enhance one's strength, but they can also transform one's physique for the better. That's why we took the liberty to come here and make an earnest request. And we hope that Your Excellency gives his consent to our help. In fact, your consent will be a blessing to the people of the entire world. There was no doubt that Xie Jinghong had delivered a very well-knit speech. Moreover, he had also managed to keep an inconspicuous. He had outlined their own selfish interests, and had further managed to lift this matter up to a level of sublimity, wherein this seemed like a matter of, for the good of the entire world. Moreover, he had declared that all of them were going to participate in the battle for seizing the heavens. You can't mess with us even if you are extremely strong. After all, you'll have sinned against humanity if you hurt us. This young boy uses his mouth very well. You think that I didn't know that you people are preparing for the battle for seizing the heavens? Many people are going to participate in it. But, do you think that this gives you the right to talk in front of me? You think this old man doesn't understand the meaning behind your words? The black-robed man gave an intense look as he said these words. He stretched his right hand towards the ground as soon as he finished talking. Then, he pulled those 3-4 broken swords towards himself. This manual control ability was nothing extraordinary. In fact, any one of them could have done it with ease. And that's why his evaluation dropped in their eyes as they watched him do it. All the experts were a little confused. Do you think that you can scare us off by showing off such ordinary skills? We would have swarmed you if we hadn't seen your imposing momentum a while ago. And you won't be able to prevent us from doing exactly that unless you pull out some new tricks. In fact, we reckon that your act of walking in the air was also somewhat illusion, nothing more. Everyone was doubtful. But they then saw the black-robed man flipped over a sleeve of his garment whilst laughing in a grim manner. Then, his fair hand stretched out towards the ground. And he slowly picked a broken sword at its pointed end with the help of his 2 fingers. Everyone was still in doubt when they saw that the broken sword suddenly turned soft and wobbly. In fact, the sword had started to wobble left and right. Suddenly, everyone saw that a mass of shiny silvery liquid slowly fell down to the ground. Then, the liquid metal from the second sword fell down. Then, the third swords. Even the fine hair on Xie Jinghong's body straightened in astonishment. In fact, he could only feel a sense of icy coldness at the back of his head at this time. And that's because those broken sword had gone through such huge transformation right in front of his eyes. Those swords had turned into a shiny silver-like liquid in a short while. They had changed into molten iron, and had disappeared from the hands of that black-robed man. This was dreadful. Unimaginable. Extremely terrible. Xi Jinghong was standing the closest to this black-robed man. But he hadn't sensed even the slightest movement in this mysterious master's chi field. Consequently, Xi Jinghong couldn't understand how he did it. He was standing so casually. So, how did that highly refined sword simply melt down in his hands? How did it melt like that? Many experts have arrived here for this task. But which of them uses an ordinary weapon? In fact, the swords of our experts aren't made of ordinary low-quality metals like copper. Moreover, the material of our swords would remain refined steel even if they break. And it's needless to say that he has used his Xian strength to melt it down. After all, that's not possible. In fact, such swords won't melt down for 3 full days if they were thrown into a furnace. However, this black-robed man had done this with ease in front of their eyes. A mere touch of his fingers had melted the sword. This had shocked everyone. Everyone was gasping in astonishment behind Xi Jinghong. All of them were scared. Everyone had doubted this man's strength a moment ago. But they were thankful that no one had questioned this man's strength out in the open. After all, doing so would have only resulted in the said individual's demise. Moreover, no one would have come up to seek justice for that deceased individual even if everyone had believed that action to be unjust. After all, only a genuine idiot would walk up to a powerhouse in order to talk about the so-called justice. You people are in luck. After all, I'm in no mood to kill today. So, focus on what you had stated as your original intention, the battle for seizing the heavens. Moreover, participate in that battle on your own merit. In fact, this old man will make an exception and not bother you today if you do so. The black-robed man continued to speak with a tone of generosity. After all, I'm also a part of this continent. So, why would I bother myself to destroy you if you don't provoke me, right? You people should leave now, okay? The expressions on Xi Jinghong's face turned complex. Half-bodied and Xiao Weicheng also looked at each other in dismay. They had suddenly found themselves stuck in an impossible situation. We were about to declare our success in destroying the entire Jun family. We were also on the verge of getting hold of 4 Beast King's Xian core. But this mysterious master appeared out of nowhere in the middle of everything. Moreover, this man's strength can't be matched. He can easily make everyone run for their lives. So, it can be said that he's being generous to us from one perspective. But what will happen to our reputation if we listen to him and leave? How will we show our faces to this world? A total of 90 great experts from the 3 holy lands were present on the scene. So, how could they give up on their objective because of a few statements made by a single man? How could they abandon their operation and walk away without any gains? After all, this would be a fatal blow to the reputation of the 3 holy lands. Moreover, they had already incited a huge amount of hatred in the hearts of the Beast Kings, especially Venerable Mei. In fact, Venerable Mei hadn't held back unlike the last time. In fact, it seemed as if she wanted to kill them. She obviously wasn't as strong as this black-robed man. But the thought of the speed and strength she possessed was enough to leave the majority of these experts devoid of a good night's sleep. But what would be the point of staying here? Your Excellency, you must be aware that we're merely following orders. And we'll be punished if we return empty-handed. But we can risk our lives and endure some punishments for your excellency. After all, we're willing to endure everything to save your excellency's reputation. But please don't turn your back on us in this manner. You are so great. And you can refine those mysterious pills with such ease. Can't you refine some of those mysterious pills for us? This would help us in promoting our strengths for the battle for seizing the heavens. In fact, the common people of this continent will forever be indebted to you even if you give us a few pills. You mentioned that you're also a part of this continent. So, wouldn't an increase of the continent's strength be beneficial for you as well? Please help us succeed, Your Excellency. The others also gazed at the black-robed man after this statement was made. And all of them waited for his answer. They believed that this was a virtuous request. So, they weren't afraid that he wouldn't give in to it. Shall I provide you with some makeup for your face as well? The well-being of the common people is your responsibility, not mine. So, why should I bother about it? The black-robed man rolled his eyes and gave out a grim laugh. You people have always been interested in the pills. In fact, you had dispatched troops in order to plunder those pills in the past as well. Moreover, you've burst into my disciple's house without any permission, and you used your power to create a bloodbath here. In fact, you people would have destroyed the entire Jun family if this old man hadn't appeared. But I've come now. And you people are only submitting to me because you can't dare to provoke me. But you're now asking me for the pills with the reasoning that they're for the welfare of the common people? The welfare of the common people? Don't tell me that you've suddenly started to respect their safety. He chuckled in a strange manner. Then, his voice became colder. I am considerate about the common people of the entire world. But when have you cared about it? And why should I help you succeed? You're not my son. So, why should I help you? Kid, have you eaten some improper medicine today? It seems that you don't have any brains. Or perhaps your brain has become moldy. This man was unrivaled in strength. He was the strongest in the continent. But he had started to hurl abuses. No one could have imagined this. Consequently, everyone looked at each other in shock. And they couldn't help but stare blankly. Half-bodied's nature was the most irascible amongst everyone present. He couldn't control his anger as soon as he saw that this black-robed man was speaking rudely to everyone. He raised his voice and spoke sternly. We address you as Your Excellency because we look up to you. But don't overestimate yourself. You mustn't crave for a foot if you've been given an inch. We are the three holy lands, and we can't be bullied so easily. We stand for the future of all living things on this continent. You might be extremely strong and appalling, but can you weigh yourself against the entire world? I obviously can't weigh myself against the entire world. But the three holy lands aren't easy to bully. That's obvious as well. After all, the three holy lands have always bullied others. But that's only because who could have dared to bully you? And I understand this aspect. But I don't understand one thing. How can the three holy lands symbolize the future of the common people? The black-robed man lowered his voice after a few sarcastic statements. Aren't you half-bodied? Half-bodied heard the ill tone of his voice. And he couldn't resist his anger. Yes? So what about it? I'm telling you right away, the three holy lands represent the future of the Xian continent. Anyway, many people have come here today. And everyone can leave. Everyone, but not you. You can't leave. Because you're an insult to the human race. You don't deserve to live on this land. This old man would feel ashamed if he allowed a trash like you to survive in the same era as his own. The black-robed man's eyes shone with boundless murderous intentions as he stated this. This black-robed man was none other than Jun Moxie. He had begun his preparations as soon as he had heard Li Yuran's warning. And he had been thinking of ways to cope with this crisis ever since. This crisis won't be a cakewalk. The entire Jun family could be uprooted if I'm not careful. Moreover, anyone who bears any relation to Tian Fa or Mei Shui Yan would be given no windows to escape. In fact, I would call out to my own death if I only attempt to scare the enemies this time. So, that's out of question. This issue had nearly turned Jun Moxie's hair white in a short while. Jun Moxie thought hard till late in the night, and eventually decided upon using the age-old method. A soldier needs to walk the path of danger if he needs to win. But things would be more dangerous this time around. Therefore, Jun Moxie escaped to the Hongjun Pagoda once the sky turned dark. Then, he tried hard to link his own spiritual energy to that of Hongjun Pagoda. He was attempting the same old technique. However, he wanted to link his entire spiritual energy to it this time around. After all, he would need to give his entire energy in order to receive the maximum amount of vitality from the Hongjun Pagoda. The mixing and merging of these two energies could give Jun Moxie the power to play around with fate itself. But Jun Moxie wouldn't pick up this option if even he was given a choice. After all, failure would mean death. Jun Moxie eventually succeeded in completing this transformation before midnight. However, this time's result was entirely different from the ones in the past. The Hongjun Pagoda was majestically vigorous this time. In fact, its spiritual energy had nearly exploded Jun Moxie's mind. The strength of this spiritual energy was far more intense this time, but it was far more risky as well. In fact, this was tantamount to a gamble of life and death. Even a single mistake could lead to a horrible end. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 562. Burns Half-bodied. Jun Moxie had always saved most of his spiritual energy for his own protection whenever he had borrowed the Hongjun Pagoda's energy in the past. However, he hadn't held back this time. In fact, it was almost as if the Hongjun Pagoda had taken over Jun Moxie this time. He couldn't make a single mistake this time. This had turned into the greatest gamble of life and death. Jun Moxie felt as if he was walking on a tightrope every second of every minute. One mistake and he'd fall down. After all, he had no spiritual energy left within himself to rely upon. Therefore, there were no safety measures with him. His body would be torn to shred if he let his guard down even for a second. However, Jun Moxie had no other choice. He had no other alternative but to throw everything on one desperate stake. But he had luckily succeeded. Then, his appearance had successfully intimidated everyone present on the scene. But that was reasonable. After all, Jun Moxie had linked his entire spiritual energy with the heavenly energy of the Hongjun Pagoda. Jun Moxie didn't know how much of the Hongjun Pagoda's aura was taken up by him this time. But he could clearly feel that he was too far away from reaching the bottom line of Hongjun Pagoda's strength even though he had linked his entire spiritual energy. He had borrowed a planet worth of energy. However, the Hongjun Pagoda was akin to the entire universe from that perspective. And Jun Moxie was feeling it this way. Even Jun Moxie had been stunned by the frightening strength of this ancient artifact. He had begun to feel extremely insignificant even though his strength had increased so drastically. Then, Jun Moxie had used the ening escape technique to descend the tower. And this had shocked everyone for a second time. Jun Moxie had to confront these old foxes who possessed the wisdom of several centuries. So, he knew that he couldn't be negligent in any manner. He also knew that he couldn't use mere words to scare them away. In fact, Jun Moxie had already thought of this point, and was well prepared this time. That's why he quickly moved to initiate the third shocking act when he noticed that everyone was still suspicious after his initial threats. The power of gold. Heavenly weapons were turned into molten iron as soon as he touched them. And Jun Moxie thought that he had settled the matter. After all, these three terribly shocking stunts had stunned and scared everyone present. Therefore, Jun Moxie told them to leave. He genuinely wanted everyone to stay so that he could kill them. But he thought about it, and realized that his current strength wasn't enough to do that. In fact, his strength still wouldn't be sufficient for the task even if he exerted himself to the fullest. Moreover, moving into action would mean that he would be exposing his fake trickery. Therefore, Jun Moxie couldn't mess with them. Moreover, he needed to ensure that he didn't force them into too tight a situation. After all, the situation was likely to result in a tragedy in the event of a change. Thousands of the Jun family's people were present here. However, who apart from him had the ability to escape? The others from the Jun family would be held back. In fact, even Mei Shuayan and her people were no exception to this. The enemy was about to admit defeat when Half-bodied had suddenly stood up. This was indeed an exemplification of the saying that, man proposes and God disposes. And that's why Jun Moxie had clenched his teeth, and decided that he had to take action against this guy no matter what happened. Moreover, this guy had gone way too far when he had insulted Mei Shuayan with his words. In fact, this was reason enough as to why he didn't deserve to live anymore. Jun Moxie had something else in mind in the beginning. He had planned that he would first deceive these people with his tricks. Then, he would send them back. But he would later go looking for this Half-bodied along with Mei Shuayan in order to settle the accounts. But this man had suddenly hopped up and said the words he wasn't supposed to say. Therefore, Jun Moxie had decided to seize this opportunity to lay him down in order to establish his might. Consequently, this would give birth to the fourth shock. And this was going to be an unforgettable one. This has to be the most pivotal one. I was able to dominate them after the first three tricks. But I couldn't scare them into running away from here. But the terror has to be a conclusive one this time. It must convince them that they have no option but to run for their lives. However, the entire Jun family will be wiped out if I fail to scare them away. In fact, nothing would be able to save us afterwards. This was bound to be a huge risk. The reason for taking this risk was the same as before. So, Jun Moxie had no other alternative but to gamble in this way. He was pretending to be a supermaster. So, the previous three acts of intimidation would have no meaning if he didn't retaliate to this open challenge. Therefore, Jun Moxie had no other way out. He needed to kill Half-bodied. Half-bodied shouted, "I respected you by calling you Your Excellency. I talked to you in such a proper manner. But you insulted me with your words. Do you think I'm scared of you? This old man doesn't care whether you're scared of him or not. This old man has decided to kill you." Jun Moxie snorted and stated. "Half-bodied. Only half of your body is left with you. Your life must anyway be very boring. So, this old man shall gift you a journey towards your other half. After all, Wouldn't it be better if you were in the company of your body's other half? Right? Suddenly, his body began to float. In fact, it had begun to move forward without any change in his chi field. Half-bodied rolled his only eye out of extreme worry. However, he noticed that Zi Jinghong and Xiao Weicheng had taken a step back. It was pretty evident from their expressions that they were telling Half-bodied, "You have a go and test him." However, Half-bodied was sure that his people wouldn't give up on him so easily. "They will come forwards to help me as long as I can withstand his first attack." Li Jutian's strength had almost reached above the Great Master level. But he still hadn't reached that level. This mysterious master was able to kill him. But this doesn't mean that we can kill an expert who is above the Great Master level. Well, he at least won't be able to kill me in one attack. Everyone will besiege him with courage as long as I'm able to face his attack without letting myself getting killed. Therefore, this bold and strong man suddenly rose into the air with a loud roar. He had decided to move into action in advance. However, he had decided to use his wrong arm. The empty left side of his shirt sleeve rolled up high in the winds, and a soft sound of whiplash was heard. It seemed that he had decided to use his empty left sleeve at the black-robed man. After all, he was scared of the mysterious powers of this black-robed man somewhere deep down his heart. Therefore, he couldn't dare to use his only surviving right hand for an attack. After all, he wouldn't lose anything more than a sleeve if his left side lost out. But he would be done for if he used his right side to attack, and sustained damage as a result. Therefore, he concentrated his entire strength into the right side of his body. This would enable him to withdraw at any time. Moreover, he could also use it in case he needed to counter. After all, it was always better to sustain a few internal injuries and retreat than losing your entire body. He only needed to defend the first wave of this mysterious master's attack. That's all. It has to be mentioned that it was the disguise of Jun Moxie's black-robed persona that had shaken Half-bodied to his extremes. After all, this black-robed mysterious master had displayed earth-shattering momentum and heaven-defying skill. However, Jun Moxie had wanted it to be this way. It would have been extremely troublesome for Jun Moxie if Half-bodied had used his entire force for an attack. In fact, Jun Moxie wouldn't be able to save himself if Half-bodied launched a counterattack with everything he had. After all, young Master Jun couldn't surpass Half-bodied's strength in any manner. In fact, Mei Shuiyan was the only one amongst the spectators who was capable of winning a fight against Half-bodied. Luckily, he hadn't dared to. It genuinely was good fortune that he hadn't dared to. The distance between the two men wasn't much. It would merely take a moment for them to collide. Jun Moxie was approaching his opponent in a leisurely manner. However, Half-bodied seemed extremely nervous and ill at ease on the other hand. In fact, several droplets of cold sweat had appeared on his face. Everyone on Mei Shuiyan's side had the same expressions as that of those on the opposite, i.e. Zi Jinghong's side. Everyone had gathered their spiritual energies, and had concentrated their spiritual sense in order to discern this mysterious man's strength. After all, this battle ought to reveal the real strength of this black-robed man. This moment would also decide the fate of the Jun family. The two men came close to each other in a moment. Half-bodied's only one gazed deep into the eyes of the black-robed man in the same manner the rays of light sink deep in the ocean. Half-bodied was thoroughly prepared in his heart, but he was still losing his head out of panic. He then brandished his left side garment towards Jun Moxie as if he was shooting a steel plate towards his enemy's chest. However, the mysterious man suddenly disappeared into thin air in front of everyone's eyes. And he went missing from Half-bodied's line of sight. Everyone was left gobsmacked by this. They ransacked their minds to find where had gone off to, but no one could comprehend where he had gone. Where did that black-robed man disappear? Suddenly, Half-bodied let out a sad and swine-like cry, and jolted another 100 feet into the air. In fact, his scream sounded so miserable that it seemed as if his heart was been torn apart from his living body. Everyone stood their ground with eyes opened wide. They were stupefied. Half-bodied's only foot had caught fire in the air. A black and dense cloud of smoke was rising in the sky as the foot was slowly burning away. Half-bodied was crying out miserably while trying to make a cyclone in order to put off the fire with his only hand. However, this seemed to be having no effect on the black flame. It was still burning in the same manner. Moreover, it was burning very slowly. Each of the spectators had a sharp and keen eyesight. So, they could clearly see that Half-bodied's foot had burned down to 1/3 its length. The flesh and bone of this man's foot had burned down to 1/3 in a flash. Half-bodied was shouting in pain. Then, he suddenly crumbled down on the ground. However, he eventually couldn't endure this extreme pain and fear. So, he wrapped his entire Xian strength around his right hand, and tried to put the fire off with its support. But, he suddenly started screaming even more miserably when his fingers came in contact with the black flame. His body shuddered. And, his bloodshot eyes nearly bulged out from his eye sockets due to extreme pain. Even his blue veins and muscles were embossed out of his forehead. All 5 of his fingers were on fire. The color of the flame was still pitch black like before. This was the flame of primal chaos. Wood burns when it touches this flame. Water burns when it touches this flame. Gold burns when it touches this flame. Even air burns when it touches this flame. There's nothing in the world which wouldn't burn when touched by the flame of primal chaos. Half-bodied slammed down with a squishing sound. The black flame had already burned down the foot. And it was busy burning his thigh now. The flame had already burnt down the hand. And had reached the shoulder by now. However, it was still burning like it had been at the start, neither too fast, nor too slow. Moreover, the flame was burning with trivial fluctuations in a very graceful manner. In fact, it appeared as if a Gothic dance or some mysterious religious rites were being performed. Everyone glared at him with eyes opened wide and gaping mouths. They looked on as Half-bodied writhed and struggled in pain. His body had gotten engulfed in spasms. The flame of primal chaos had engulfed the muscles of his entire body. And this had forced them to contract in a very violent manner. The muscles of his body kept twitching and throbbing every now and then. And his appearance kept changing. But the flame hadn't taken up his life yet. In fact, he was still far from death. Clang! Ning Wuqing unsheathed his long sword. His sword united with his body like the rainbow unites with the sky. He brushed the sword twice and chopped at Half-bodied's shoulder and thigh. He had cut off the 2 places that were on fire. You think it's so simple? You think you'll have your way so easily? An extremely emphatic voice echoed in the air. Everyone was dumbstruck when they saw what was standing near Half-bodied. A black shadow had suddenly appeared there. It was the black-robed man. The black-robed man had disappeared a while ago. However, he had reappeared the same way he had disappeared, without any movement in his chi field. Therefore, no one could understand how he was doing it. Then, he looked at Ning Wuqing in a pitiful manner, and spoke up. I want to kill this man. So, he'll still die even if he has been crippled by you. His hands stretched out as he said these words. Suddenly, 2 pitch-black flames appeared on his hands. These 2 flames were also as dark as the night itself. Then, A deadly scream rose up in the sky. And it started to seem as if these flames were the gates of the underworld. These flames were more ferocious than those which were burning on Half-bodied's body. In fact, they resembled two fiery dragons which were swaying gently in the cold and dark night. Ning Wuqing, do you also want a taste of it? Jun Moxie snorted as he asked. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 563. 3 Holy Lands. I'll come to you. Ning Wuqing's complexion underwent a drastic change, and he took 2 steps back. Even his hands and feet were slightly trembling. He had already seen Half-bodied's miserable condition. So, how could he even think of experiencing it himself? This was when he suddenly heard some people of his team shouting at him, Ning Wuqing, discard your sword. Ning Wuqing was startled to hear this. So, he lowered his head to look. And he instantly lost his nerves. He let go off his long sword without much delay, and it fell to the ground. Then, he saw that a black mass of fire had emerged on the pointed end of his sword. This flame then gradually extended to the entire sword. He had used this sword to cut off Half-bodied's arm and thigh a moment ago. Therefore, the pointed end had come in contact with the black fire. Surprisingly, the entire sword had caught fire as a result. The most terrible fact was that this black flame had emitted no sound, no light, and no heat. Moreover, it could burn metal, but the individuals present nearby wouldn't even come to know of it. Ning Wuqing's complexion turned as white as paper. The fear of this close call was still lingering on his heart. This flame would have burnt my entire hand if I had continued to hold my sword. Then, Ning Wuqing thought of the devastation that had befallen Half-bodied. And he couldn't help but tremble. Even his spirit turned cold and began to shiver. He watched the black fire as it slowly and gradually engulfed his sword on ground. Ning Wuqing felt terrible, as if a knife was being twisted through his heart. This was my favorite weapon. Then, he looked at Half-bodied again, and saw that the black flame had started burning on his body again. In fact, the flame had burned his lower abdomen away by now. Only half of his skull and half the chest remained. Half-bodied was no longer shouting. But he was still breathing. He had survived for such a long time because of the excellent Xian strength from his meridians had been resisting the flame to some extent. However, his body was throbbing now. In fact, it seemed as if he was suffering the horrible torments of hell. Half-bodied eventually died. However, he died without even leaving a single speck of ash behind. He didn't even get a chance to turn into smoke since he had been burnt by the dreadful flame of primal chaos. Instead, his body had disappeared into thin air. He was expert who possessed the strength of above the great master level. But he wasn't even granted the time to showcase his signature moves. He had only been able to brandish his sleeve towards his opponent. But he hadn't even gotten the chance to hit the enemy. Instead, a black mysterious fire had risen out of nowhere, and it had burned him while he was still alive. His mind had remained sober to bear that tremendously horrible suffering until he had died. He had clearly felt his own body getting roasted till death while it had slowly faded away. He had dreaded and despaired. His comrades and colleagues had stood nearby and stared at him in helplessness. However, no one had come up to help him. Instead, all of them had looked on as he had gradually turned into ashes. The seemingly ordinary lumps remained on the ground. These were the leftovers of the flame. These 3 remaining sparks had continued to burn on even though they had already eaten. Thought Ning Wuqing's sword had Half-bodied's body. And that was because they had started to burn the ground now. In fact, the black flame was still burning without a halt. Suddenly, the black-robed man waved his hand and the black flame rose into the sky. Then, it landed into the man's hands and disappeared into nothingness. Nothing but blank spaces remained on the ground now. No remnants of a sword or a skeleton could be seen on the ground. That blank space was too horrible to look at. But no one dared to say anything. All of them were stationary and dumbfounded. In fact, they looked like statues. Zi Jinghong breathed a long sigh after a long silence. Suddenly, he felt an itch on his forehead. So, he stretched his hand to touch it. However, he couldn't comprehend when his forehead had gotten studded with sweat. He felt a strange chill in his garments as the cold wind blew past. And he suddenly felt as if cold water had been poured into his clothes. Half-bodied was nearly as strong as me. I might be a little better, but there wasn't much of a difference in our strengths. However, he was tortured to death by the enemy with so much ease. Moreover, no one could even figure how this man managed to do it. Things can often seem confusing to the individual who is involved in the fray. But the onlookers can usually get a clear picture of the situation at hand. And there are many onlookers here. But not a single person was able to detect the mystery behind this black-robed man's moves. Will I be able to escape if he targets me like this? The answer is a very certain no. This matter is over clear at this point. So, making any amount of analyses and judgments is unnecessary. Then, he looked at the other people on his side. Everybody seemed to be thinking the same way. Their eyes were looking straight. Their faces were stiff, and drops of sweat were streaming down from their foreheads. Who amongst these individuals hadn't run amok the lands in the past? Who amongst them hadn't moved unhindered in the entire world? All of them had gathered here in one team. However, that one man had managed to scare everyone to such an extent. This clearly indicated one thing: this black-robed man's strength was undoubtedly sinister and abnormal. Zi Jinghong, do you have anything else to say? Is there anything else you'd like to discuss? Jun Moxie folded his hands behind his back and gazed at Zi Jinghong as he asked this question. The black-robed man's imposing vigor also began to turn unstable as this happened. It seemed that he had started becoming extremely irritable and angry. It seemed as if a hurricane was beginning to take birth on an ocean. The waves were ready to soar into the sky. Zi Jinghong was scared to death by this. He thought that he knew what had gone wrong. This black-robed man is on the verge of breaking out. Perhaps he will destroy me and everyone on my side if I don't give him a reply that pleases him. However, he was completely unaware that Jun Moxie had been feeling unbearably anxious when he had said that. And that was because he was struggling to maintain his appearance at this time. Jun Moxie had started his act with the yin-yang escape method. And everything had been normal at that time. But the flame of primal chaos's usage had taken its toll on him. He was clearly sensing that the Hongjun Pagoda's energy was becoming increasingly unstable and restless with the passage of time. In fact, it was getting increasingly difficult for him to control it. The fusion has been too strong and prolonged this time. My spiritual strength is already finding it hard to handle the enormous energy of the Hongjun Pagoda. Its energy may break through my mental restraints at any point of time. And I'll be completely helpless when that happens. We'll withdraw at once since the senior has ordered it. However, I request the senior to consider the matter of those pills once again. After all, the battle for seizing the heavens isn't a question of any family's reputation. Instead, it concerns the future of the entire Xian continent's common people. Zi Jinghong bowed in a respectful manner. Well, I've thought over this matter several times. I'll personally come to the Three Holy Lands when the time is right. Haha. 3 Holy Lands. I'll surely come to you. Jun Moxie's voice sunk, and he began to speak in a lowered tone. He clenched his teeth and thought something entirely different in his mind. I won't come to give you the pills. Instead, I'll come to take revenge and kill you. You dared to bully my Jun family. I'm the son of this family. So, what good would my life be if I don't come looking out for you in the future? Why would I be kind towards your 3 holy lands? Many thanks for your approval. Your Excellency. Zi Jinghong was overjoyed at this. So, he replied with extreme courtesy. Then, he somewhat stammered as he asked, but after how much time? Not much. I'll come within 2 years. I'll come before the battle for seizing the heavens at the latest. And I'll ensure that I come to the 3 holy lands in person. Is there anything else you wish to say? Nothing? Then, leave at once. And don't come back to the Jun family. You won't be able to leave if you come here again. However, this old man has no interest in any other place outside. That's all I have to say. Jun Moxie had begun to have a splitting headache. He felt as if his soul was mercilessly being torn apart. In fact, he nearly wanted to cry out. Jun Moxie felt as if his pain was as intense as the one that had been endured by Half-bodied when he had been burnt down. I request your Excellency to reveal his name, please. It'll help us in explaining ourselves upon our return. Zi Jinghong had already decided to withdraw. So, he waved his hand in order to gesture the 89 people from the 3 holy lands. He had signaled them to get together and prepare to withdraw, regardless of whether they were wounded or not. The people from the elusive land of immortals were grieving at this decision. But they knew that they didn't have a choice. After all, not even a trace of Half-bodied could be found at this time. So, what other option did they have even if they were angry? Take revenge. That was a joke. An ant had died under the elephant's foot. And the other ants wanted to plan revenge. But the question was, how to go about it. We'll have to wait until we go back and report this to our Empress. We'll only be throwing away our lives even if we go all out right now. The Great Golden City and illusory Ocean of Blood were already preparing for a withdrawal. So, Ning Wuqing and his people also prepared to retreat since they didn't have a better choice. This old Feng Ju Qing used to have a nickname in the past long gone, heartlessly beheads the heavens. Jun Moxie coldly groaned and continued. Your thousands of years old seniors will know this old man's name if they are still alive. Go back and ask them about me. Zi Jinghong suddenly gasped in amazement. In fact, he nearly bit his tongue. He had been stunned to the core. No wonder. This man can seize the world and bring nature under his control with his moves. This man has lived for thousands of years. He's an ultra-old freak. He couldn't dare to say anything more. So, he only spoke a few words out of extreme respect. Your Excellency, I'll take your leave now. However, the great and immortal master is always welcome to visit the 3 holy lands. Jun Moxie hummed in response. He turned his back on them to avoid any further conversation. In fact, it seemed as if he was trying to ignore them. His breathing was also growing more and more erratic. He was on the verge of breaking down. He couldn't take it anymore. However, Zi Jinghong and his people misunderstood this gesture as well. They thought that this great old man who had lived for 1,000 years had turned his back on them because he was dissatisfied with them for dragging this conversation out. They believed that he had been enraged to an extent that he could break out at any time. So, their hearts skipped a beat out of fear. Xi Jinghong quickly took the lead and shouted for his people to get moving. Move! Those 89 experts suddenly leapt into the air and began to move away. There was no doubt that these at least great master-level experts were extremely fast. They flashed over the fence of the Jun family's residence and disappeared into thin air within the blink of an eye. Finally had they left. They were gone at last. Jun Moxie heaved a sigh of relief. He was no longer able to maintain his imposing presence. The pressure from the Hongjun Pagoda's aura had already pushed him to his limits. This unusual and extraordinary aura didn't belong to the human world. So, how could Jun Moxie's human body endure such an explosive power? Jun Moxie had to pay the price for the spiritual energy he had obtained and displayed over the course of this fusion. And the consequence for the same was the complete upheaval of his entire spiritual energy. Therefore, he had to bear the extreme pressure of the entire Hongjun Pagoda's energy. In fact, it could be reckoned that Jun Moxie's soul would have scattered to pieces a long time ago if he hadn't been astonishingly tough and resilient. Jun Moxie relaxed his mind as soon as the powerful enemy left. Consequently, he unconsciously ended up releasing the entire energy he had so far kept restrained. There was a loud and abnormally frantic explosion. It was as if a bomb had exploded. His energy had abruptly exploded since he wasn't able to restrain it anymore. Mei Shuiyan and the others were about to come up in order to thank him. However, they suddenly found that their noses and mouths had been blocked. Moreover, this feeling of suffocation was intense and unbearable. Everything went hazy in front of their eyes, and their innermost feelings of fear surfaced on their panicked faces. In fact, an urge to kneel down had suddenly arisen from the bottom of their hearts. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 564. I'll bury the entire world with him if he dies. The team members of the Heavenly Destroyers and Soul Devourers were weaker in terms of cultivation. The Jun family's soldiers and guards were even weaker. These people simply kneeled to the ground with plop sounds. They had bent towards the ground under the tremendous pressure of this grandeur. In fact, many people had straightaway prostrated themselves in admiration. Jun Moxie had suffered a frantic attack of enormous pain and unprecedented huge pressure as soon as the enemy had withdrawn. He couldn't bear the sufferings anymore, and gave out a painful cry. Then, he disappeared with a brushing sound. He didn't even get the time to have a look at the Jun family's losses. In fact, he didn't have the time to take a look at the injuries suffered by his grandfather and third uncle. His entire spiritual energy had been crushed by now. So, he was sucked in by the Hongjun Pagoda. He had disappeared without a trace. Jun Zhantian and Jun Wuyi had earlier thought that they'd be dead in no time. They were already despairing, and had no expectations of being saved. However, this mountain of danger had suddenly changed its course. Therefore, they braced their wounded bodies and stepped forward to thank their savior. But their savior suddenly disappeared into thin air. He's an unusual man. The father and son thought the same thing. However, the two men couldn't contain their happiness as they thought that this ferocious person had turned out to be Jun Moxie's master. After all, this meant that the Jun family wouldn't have to deal with any mishaps for a fairly long time. Jun Zhantian heaved a sigh as he looked around the chaotic courtyard. But he was still happy somewhere in his heart. We were lucky that there weren't much causality today. Indeed. This has been a lucky day. He issued an order to have the courtyard cleaned and restored to its former appearance, and told his people to get some rest. The old lord of the Jun family hadn't spoken in an amicable tone, but his manner of speaking was extremely cordial. In fact, the people present on the scene had clearly sensed the affection in his voice. Old man Jun had clearly realized. These people present here are the real backbone of the Jun family. These are the people who can be trusted. These people will be one of us in the future. And one doesn't need to be thankful to one's own family. But it is the responsibility of the family's lord that he wholeheartedly strives for the welfare and success of his entire family. However, Jun Xie had made plans for the ones who hadn't showed up this time. Let these turbulent times pass. I'll banish them after that. Would they only stand alongside their family to enjoy the good times? Why should they stay here if they can't share the troubles as well? Jun Xie quickly ordered Jun Wuyi once the arrangements had been made. Make haste and go looking for Jun Moxie. See how things are with him. Such a huge incident took place. So, why didn't he show up? Jun Wuyi accepted the order and quickly left. However, Mei Shuiyan's mind had wildly spiraled into a shock on the other hand. Mei Shuiyan had been standing the closest to Jun Moxie. And she was also the strongest among the ones present on the scene. Jun Moxie had groaned in pain a moment before he had disappeared. That sound had been nearly inaudible, but Mei Shuiyan was sharp enough to catch the sound of his voice. She had felt a wave of shock, and her heart had begun to palpitate. Why would this unrivaled entity groan so painfully? And his voice, why does it resemble Jun Moxie's voice? Is it possible that this mysteriously powerful man is none other than Jun Moxie himself? Was this merely another one of his mysterious tricks? But how is it even possible? Snake King tottered towards her and asked, "Ah? Has that mysteriously capable senior left?" Mei Yuyan stood motionless as she pondered over her doubts in a daze. She didn't even hear what the Snake King had said. She was trying to remember each and every word Jun Moxie had uttered. All his words were echoing in her ear. His voice continued to echo in her ears, and things gradually became clearer. Then, she suddenly groaned. It was Jun Moxie's voice. His. It was his voice. But how? He was able to kill an expert who possessed strength greater than the great master level. But one has to pay an extremely disastrous price for this if they forcefully draw support from an external force. This is the basic reason why people don't use such high-handed methods on regular basis. And Jun Moxie can't be an exception to this either. Jun Moxie had already intimidated everyone early on. But I had previous stated that I would kill that bastard. Is that why Jun Moxie pushed himself? Did he do it for me? Was it him? Or was it not? Did he do it for me? Or did he not? Did he? Or did he not? Mei Shuiyan had been in touch with Jun Moxie for a long time. So, she knew a lot about him. I've seen him smile. I've seen him curse. I've seen him shout. I've seen him lash out in anger. I've seen him in almost all kinds of situations. But I've never seen him this way. I've never seen him cry out. I've never seen him groan so painfully. We were in the southern heaven city in the past. I had put him inside my world cage, and I had mistreated him very horribly at that time. But he hadn't groaned out so painfully at that time. He was made to suffer throughout his journey from southern heaven city to Tianxiang city. Anyone else would have been intimidated by those endless sufferings if they had been in his shoes. But Jun Xie was as unshakable as ever. I had again beaten him outside the Tianxiang city. But he didn't break down like this even then. In fact, this man seemed to feel no pain. However, Mei Shuayan had clearly heard him groan in pain a moment ago. And a strange emotion had filled her heart as a result. In fact, she felt as if her own heart was in pain. She didn't open her mouth to speak. Instead, she turned her head around and flew towards Jun Moxie's courtyard. She desperately wanted to confirm her doubts. After all, such a big incident had happened today, but Jun Moxie hadn't showed up. Mei Shuayan had been hoping that Jun Moxie would have fled this entire time. However, she somehow knew that he wasn't a man of such character. This man is indifferent towards life and death. He's a man of such a lofty and awe-inspiring character. Why would he timidly run away from an enemy? Mei Shuayan couldn't believe that Jun Moxie would have fled for this life. However, he didn't show up the entire time. This is extremely strange. Maybe he went to find his master. But the fact that he has such a strong support on his side makes it even more improbable for him to escape. Moreover, he shouldn't have been afraid of the enemy once his master had appeared in front of everyone. In fact, the enemy has even withdrawn now. But Jun Moxie still hasn't showed up. Being able to find him in the Jun family right now will prove that he isn't that black-robed man. But if I can't find him, what would that painful groan indicate in that case? What does that mean? And what price did he have to pay for everything he did if he is that mysterious man? Mei Shuayan was at a level of experience where she knew that there were countless things in the world which couldn't be explained. In fact, she could have also drawn support from such secret methods when she was in her prime before she had sustained those internal injuries. However, she would have had to pay a huge price for using those secret techniques. In fact, that price would have been so high that she would have been pushed into a mortal situation. And she believed that no one would have been stupid enough to use such a method. Is it possible that Jun Moxie had used one of such techniques? Did he genuinely touch upon some heavenly energy a moment ago? But how can he bear such a majestic power? Perhaps even I would have had to pay the cost of my life for such a thing. So, how could a spirit Xian Jun Moxie endure it? But this can clearly explain that painful groan. Mei Shuayan flashed into Jun Moxie's courtyard like electricity. She ransacked the courtyard and came out like lightning to search throughout the Jun residence. She spread her spiritual sense in all directions and searched everywhere. She didn't even miss a single nook or corner. She even forgot the searing pain in her internal organs. And she entirely neglected that blood was still slowly overflowing from the corners of her mouth. In fact, she had forgotten about all of it in its entirety. Instead, she earnestly searched every nook and corner of that place with extreme anxiety in her eyes. Mei Shuayan eventually came to a stop. But she was extremely disappointed. She was standing in front of the elegant fragrance courtyard. Everything was the same as before in the Jun residence. However, Jun Moxie was nowhere to be seen. He had mysteriously disappeared many times in the past as well. But Mei Shuayan knew that it was different this time. It was entirely different this time. Snowflakes were falling down at a moderate speed. Mei Shuayan had always been fond of this weather. They had just escaped from a great danger, but Mei Shuayan's heart was still full of sadness. She stood with the support of the pillar at this time. She had felt weak for the first time in her life. But where did he go? Where? She gently closed her eyes. And a teardrop slowly oozed out. Would I have sustained those injuries if I had acted more decisively when I had been ambushed by those 10 experts? Would he have had to act so rashly if I had been of more help? Why? Snake King slowly came towards her. She was very worried. Big sister. Two very fierce expressions suddenly gleamed in Mei Shuiyan's eyes. She stood still for quite a while, but the hair at the back of her head had started to flutter. Then, she abruptly turned her head, and her eyes suddenly exposed an expression of indifference. Tiger King and Bear King? Yes. We're here, big sister. Bear King and Earth Cracker were covered in bruises and scars. But they stepped forward to face Mei Shuiyan. You two. Why didn't you two use the weapons Jun Moxie had given you? You two were blindly using your fists and feet to fight. Are you dumb? Mei Shuiyan began to reprimand them. I. Big Bear and Earth Cracker were tongue-tied. They wanted to say, we didn't get the time. But they didn't dare speak to up. Instead, they lowered their faces in shame. The fact was that these two beast kings hadn't gotten accustomed to carrying their weapons around. Therefore, they had madly charged out to kill the enemy when the fight had broken out. And the fight had already gotten over by the time they remembered about their new weapons. But it may be a good thing as far as the matter is concerned this time around. The people from the 3 Holy Lands might have misjudged your strengths. So, you two will return to the Tianfa forest at once. Don't hesitate in killing anyone who blocks your path. And remember one thing very clearly: those 2 heavenly weapons aren't for decoration. I want those pills returned back with safety, even if you two have to sacrifice your lives in doing so. Mei Shuiyan's voice had sounded as cold as a millennia-old block of ice. Moreover, inform every peak 9th level Xian beasts in the Tianfa forest they must make breakthroughs in 2 years. I will wipe them away upon my return if they fail. Why should they stay if they're so useless? All Xian beasts who are at the bottlenecks will be treated the same way, no matter what level they're at. You and Third Crane won't be an exception either. You will also be treated similarly. Upgrade your strength as much as you can. Then, assemble in the Tianfa forest. And wait for my command. If he's dead. I'm going to the 3 Holy Lands if he's dead. In fact, I'll bury the billions of creatures who walk on this continent. A bloodied murderous intention had seemingly congealed in Mei Shuiyan's tone when she had stated those last few words. Moreover, her tone had been extremely decisive. It was evident that there was no room for margin. Could people exploit a person of noble character? But this is what can happen to people with conspiring nature when the anger of a person with noble character explodes. The snake, bear, and Tiger King listened to Mei Shuiyan's words, and couldn't help but tremble out of fear. Big sister looks very angry and anxious right now. It seems that many of our brothers in the Tianfa forest are going to be in a problem. Breaking through the bottleneck is easier said than done. But how could they dare to refute her at this time? They had no choice but to comply in unison. Yes. We understood. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 565. That was very worrisome. Big Bear and Earth Cracker slowly lifted their heads to look at Mei Shuiyan. Then, the Bear King stammered, "Big sister, shall we leave right away? Just get lost right this moment." Mei Shuiyan screamed at them. The 2 beast kings trembled out of fear. They then rushed to leave that place with a whoosh. In fact, The two tall and sturdy figures had vanished into the snow in the blink of an eye. They were nowhere to be seen. Their current movements had been even quicker than the ones they had displayed during the battle with the three Holy Lands. Mei Shuayan wasn't feeling very good inside her heart, but she knew that this was the best opportunity for them to leave. The people from the three Holy Lands were still not too far from the peripheries of Tianxiang City at this time. Mei Shuayan had calculated the enemy's moves in her mind. They will believe that the Bear King and Tiger King have obtained the aid of that mysterious man from the Jun family. So, these two Beast Kings should be living here without any apprehensions. This means that these two shouldn't start on their journey back without tending to their wounds first. Therefore, the enemy won't plan on an interception until a few days have passed. However, these two Beast Kings are very quick. So, the two of them would have traveled thousands of miles by the time those people arrived to make an interception. But, the matter would have been done and dusted by then. Therefore, Mei Shuayan had taken this decision without delay. The two Beast Kings had sustained some injuries, but she had still ordered them to start off at their full speeds without any delay. And that's because this moment was the safest for their departure even if they were injured. In fact, the present moment was much safer than the dangers they would have to confront after a few days had passed. Mei Shuayan stood motionless in the snowy breeze after the two Beast Kings left. She was gently stroking the pillar as her gaze remained obsessively fixed at Jun Moxie's courtyard. Then, she suddenly smiled as a remark made by Jun Moxie surfaced in her mind. What happened to him? This anxiety is killing me. Snake King stood quietly at her side. There was a complex expression in her eyes. A long while passed like this. Then, Mei Shuayan let out a soft sigh and asked, "Did you find where Jun Moxie is?" Snake King looked at her and replied, "Jun family's people are continuously on the lookout for him. Big sister, please don't worry. He's nowhere to be seen at the moment, but he has such a tyrannical master by his side. Nothing bad will happen to him." Mei Shuayan sighed and powerlessly closed her eyes. I'm afraid that he's pretending to be his own master. But, I think that I shouldn't tell anyone about this." Mei Shuayan's heart had become impatient and anxious. But, there was nothing that she could do. She stood motionlessly for a long time. Then, something suddenly stirred up inside her, and blood spurted out her mouth. The extremely powerful energy from the Hongjun Pagoda had exploded once Jun Moxie was no longer able to contain it. The experts from the three Holy Lands were on the run at that time. However, they suddenly stopped when they heard the sound of that explosion. They then looked back and witnessed this vigorous and imposing storm. And they couldn't prevent themselves from sweating profusely. However, their hearts were brimming with happiness. They felt lucky to have moved out in time. That was very fierce. Brother Z, we ran into a great danger this time. In fact, I'm afraid that if Brother Z hadn't taken such a prompt decision. Xiao Wei Cheng rushed to his side. He was wearing the three-pearled crown of the great golden city. He whispered to Zi Jinghong whilst trying to recover from the shock as they rushed along. That was very worrisome. Zi Jinghong also wiped off his cold sweat. Then, he turned his head around and looked back. He then spoke up while gnashing his teeth in anger. Ning Wuqing and Ma Jiangming are such bastards. They had said that nothing would stop us from being victorious and glorious as long as we can deal with Venerable Mei. And then, we ran into a fiery demon who killed our people and broke our weapons. And we eventually had to retreat in defeat. This has tarnished us like nothing else could have. It feels like we've been deceived. This third-in-rank Xie was feeling extremely indignant at the moment. He felt as if the fact that he had to bow his head in front of that mysterious man had scarred to his prestige to the extreme. That man possessed such a monstrous strength. All 90 of us would have died there if you hadn't brought up the battle for seizing the heavens. There's no need to mention much, just think about that black flame for a moment. It left nothing of half-bodied. And think about what happened when Ning Wuqing stepped up. If that old freak had waved his hand and thrown those flames into our crowd. Brother Xiao, then. Xi Jinghong smacked his lips and shook his head. That's right. We could have stayed there because that black fire was beyond our capabilities. It would have burned us to pieces in a short while in case it was launched in full swing. But it had disappeared without a trace when he had waved his hand to stop it. We couldn't even make out where and how it disappeared. Brother Xi. It was a horrifying magical skill. Xiao Weicheng was still trembling with fear. But he didn't know that Jun Moxie also wanted to sow that. However, the issue was that Jun Moxie wasn't capable of doing something like that at that moment. Using the fire against 1 or 2 people was still possible for him. But Jun Moxie's trick would have been rendered powerless if had tried to use it against so many people. Xiao Weicheng continued. That mysterious old man's black flame was extremely appalling. But Brother Xi, did you notice what happened when he reappeared after setting half-bodied on fire? Your little brother felt as if he had secretly gone underground and had reappeared after drilling out from there. This could explain his mysterious skill. But there was no hole at the spot where he drilled out of. Moreover, there was no fluctuation in his energy. That's how he was disappearing and reappearing at will like. He's matchless in many ways. And he can also go underground. Yes, that old freak has lived for thousands of years. So, how could he be ordinary? Xi Jinghong seemed to be reassuring him. After all, he has practiced cultivation for thousands of years. What he had implied was, what's the point of comparing ourselves with an old freak who has been cultivating for thousands of years? So, what's the point of being anxious about it? Brother Xi is right. Xiao Weicheng thought along these lines, and felt a bit better as a result. Indeed, we had the wrong information. In fact, this misinformation was deadly. But it's fortunate that our illusory ocean of blood didn't suffer much losses. Else, our Lord would have peeled off our skins upon our return. It's no longer surprising that Huang Taiyang vanished like that. Dang it! Such a terrible monster genuinely exists in this world. Even another 8 or 10 Huang Taiyangs would have turned to dust in front of this man. Xi Jinghong spoke with some regret in his tone. Our great golden city hasn't suffered too much damage either. Xiao Weicheng also breathed a sigh of relief. Then, he spoke up as if he was gloating over the losses of others. However, half-bodied from the elusive land of immortals was sent to the sky like a lantern. In fact, he was even set on fire by that senior, he. They felt happy as they saw the gloomy and sullen face of Ning Wuqing from the elusive land of immortals. They reckoned that this man would have a very unpleasant time upon his return. Indeed, he was the ones who brought that incorrect information. And that led to the demise of a major leader from his holy land. Moreover, the sword he had been carrying with himself for so many years has also turned into molten iron. Ning Wuqing will have to face the violent abuses and beatings of the Empress when he returns to the elusive land of immortals. It would be extremely strange if he managed to avoid it. However, that half-body deserved to die. Did you listen to way he was speaking? Did he even sound like an expert who was above the great master level? Even a dirty hooligan wouldn't have stooped to such a level. It's not surprising that the old man despised him. Zi Jinghong sighed in agreement. Seeing that old boy being roasted felt good. In fact, it seems like that old man had somewhat done it for everyone's satisfaction. Furthermore, that Feng Ju Qing had spoken very rightly. After all, half-bodied was merely half-left. So, what was the purpose of his life anyway? So. Brother Z. Shall we change our other plans? Xiao Wei Cheng asked with his inquisitive gaze. As a matter of fact, this might not be necessary. Senior Feng has only been the Jun family's patron the entire time. After all, he is also a human. He never even mentioned about the Tian Fa forest. Therefore, we can still do what we came for. After all, why didn't he mention about Tian Fa if he cared about it? Besides, we can say that we didn't know anything about this if he comes to press us. In fact, he probably won't mess with us because of the battle for seizing the heavens. Besides, what's done is done. So, it would be of no use if he were to get angry with us over it. He's certainly extremely appalling, but can he rely on his own strength to stand against an entire race of those outsiders? So, aren't we a necessary factor in the bigger picture? Zi Jinghong spoke as a treacherous smile appeared on the corners of his mouth. Jun Moxie had scarcely realized this point when he was doing the talking earlier. It was just that he was in too much pain at that time. Let's put aside the Tianxiang city's matter if that's the case. Instead, let's concentrate our entire strength on the Tian Fa forest. Let's take Bear King and Tiger King first. We can decide upon the rest later. Xiao Wei Cheng clenched his fist. Tiger King and Bear King have sustained injuries today. So, they will recuperate for a few days since they're staying in a safe zone right now. Moreover, they will rest a few days before they start on their return journey. We'll also be able to make proper arrangements by that time. Anyway, those two don't have the kind of divine weapons Venerable Mei and Snake King possess. So, we'll be able to succeed with relative ease. Zi Jinghong had a radiant spark in his eyes. That's right. And, hadn't that Jun Moxie mentioned that he wanted to visit the Dongfang family? Moreover, Venerable Mei lusts after him. So, she'll probably follow right after him. That time would bring the best opportunity for us. But, we must ensure that we don't hurt Jun Moxie. Instead, we must ensure that we capture him safely. Perhaps we can use him to talk conditions with that black-robed man. Moreover, we need to redouble our efforts in spying over the Jun family. We should even try to get hold of some of the Jun family's members if necessary. Xiao Wei Cheng had been listening with smiles of exultation. However, he couldn't help but interrupt at this time. Are you trying to court death? Zi Jinghong looked at him as if he was looking at an idiot. He then spoke up. That Feng Ju Qing is obviously a permanent resident at the Jun family. Anyway, one tends to require a permanent office if they're into alchemy. Moreover, that aristocratic hall has been auctioning such mysterious pills for a long time. In fact, they're already sold a scary amount of them. It is obvious that this old freak has been refining those pills. So, this explains that the old freak has been staying at the Jun family's residence. He has never left their place. And, you want to kidnap the Jun family's members? Seriously? How did a man wearing the three-pearled crown of the great golden city come up with such a suicidal idea? Xiao Wei Cheng's forehead started to brim with sweat. He had suddenly realized that the Jun family couldn't be messed with. It would be better for us to dispatch people to collect huge amounts of money. We should also start gathering the herbs we've been collecting over the years. That old freak obviously has some brilliant and majestic skills, but he's clearly concerned about the battle for seizing the heavens. We need to get accustomed to the aristocratic hall's rule and regulations. And we need to put in some investments. That old freak might not refuse us since we've come from 1,000 miles away as long as we follow their norms. In fact, he might even help us in refining some of the mysterious pills. Hee hee. Xi Jinghong had some crafty expressions on his face as he said these words. Elder brother Xi, you're right. Our issues will be easily solved as long as we follow that old guy. Xiao Wei Cheng said in agreement. But we can't relax as far as the beast kings there are concerned. Dispatch a group of people to monitor the roads that lead out of the Jun family's residence. We must be informed as soon as Tiger King and Bear King come out. We'll begin the interceptions once they're about 500 miles away from Tianxiang City. Xi Jinghong issued strict orders. After all, they might run back to the Jun family if they break away from our ambush in case they're not too far away from Tianxiang. And that would be extremely terrible for us. That's right. Xiao Wei Cheng pondered and said, we also need to dispatch a few people for the city gates, or the roads that lead to the southern heaven city in order to be sure. Let's make the most out of this operation. This is going to be a little dangerous. But we haven't sustained many injuries yet. So, our strengths are still intact. In fact, we won't suffer much of a loss even if a few of our people get injured. Xi Jinghong laughed in a wicked manner. These people from the elusive land of immortals aren't exactly a thunder of dragons. But they can still be of use to us. After all, they do possess a decent amount of strength. Xiao Wei Cheng started smiling since he had understood the meaning intended. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 566. Recovery or breakthrough. In his negligent state of mind, Jun Moxie stood strong. His consciousness became blurry and an impact caused him to be sucked into the Hongjun pagoda. He felt pain and the pain was as if he was fried in an oil pan for 500 times or as if his tongue was being pulled for about 10,000 times. As he was sucked into the Hongjun pagoda, Jun Moxie lost consciousness. In his state of unconsciousness, traces of blood oozed out of Jun Moxie's face and body. The black robe over his body started to bulge up. Suddenly, there was a bang sound and the robe exploded into pieces. How could his other clothing remain intact when even his outermost part of his robe was fragmented into pieces? As a result, young Master Jun went naked. Blood flowed out from Jun Moxie's naked body like a fountain for a long time and it was as thick as a misty fog. His body was soaked with blood, twitching in pain and distorted. It seemed as if his ribs were constantly moving. The power that Jun Moxie borrowed this time around seemed to be too strong for him. It was far beyond what he could handle. The damage that it caused on his physical health was unexpected and could not be compared to his previous injuries. If Jun Moxie was not sucked into the Hongjun pagoda at the last moment, his body would have exploded and the entire sky would be filled with a thick bloody fog. After a while, the Hongjun pagoda swarmed with a spiritual energy and it went towards Jun Moxie. It entered his body, moving through his 5 sense organs, his sweat pores, every part of his body. It was unknown how much time passed. Jun Moxie finally twitched his finger and began to slowly open his eyes. He struggled as he looked around, and he finally yelled, "What the hell?" Apparently this old man did not die. So interesting. It is really interesting. This time, Young Master Jun knew that he could have truly died. He played it big this time around. When he recovered, he immediately felt a splitting pain in his head, as if a monkey was jumping around in his head. The veins on both sides of his heads were beating wildly like a skipping rope. It seemed like 1,000 steel needles were poking all the joints on his body. This pain was made worse when his little brother also started swaying around in excruciating pain. These symptoms made Jun Moxie twitch his eyebrows and shout, "What the hell? It has nothing to with you. You are not required in this fight. Why are you coaxing me? Are you trying to prove your strength?" Just as he finished scolding, Jun Moxie was filled with pain. Anyway, there was no one here listening. Young Master Jun would rather not endure it any further, and he screamed as if a ghost was crying, and as if 10,000 pigs were being slaughtered at a time. It was an earth-shattering moment. What the hell? Why is this so painful? It's his grandfather's challenge to the young master. Jun Moxie knew the three-word enhanced version. From last time till now, he went through all the swear words that could be used to scold people. He did not just go through it once, but he went across various dialects to scold others. He went up to various gods, went down to Yin Chao hell, went from Buddha to the land, he suffered, and he subsequently scolded the people from the 3 holy places. He scolded since the past decades, from generation to generation, back till the 72 generations of the ancestors of all female direct family members, and no one was spared. Young Master Jun twisted his eyebrows and glared with his eyes. Sulking, his tongue was getting smoother, his scolding became more experienced and skilled. And he was using swear words everywhere. At this rate, if a swearing competition was to be held, the winner would definitely be Jun Moxie. In fact, he would win with much ease. No one would have any objections, nor anyone be unsatisfied with Jun Moxie as the winner. It can even cause the dead to dance disco in their coffins and dance till they are exhausted to death. When his mouth was busy moving, the spiritual aura from Hongyi Pagoda was not affected by this brat's malicious words, but it was more diligent. Until suddenly, why is it not painful anymore? Jun Moxie finally stopped swearing when he found out that his body was no longer in pain anymore. Does swearing help in recovering? Wahahaha. There is an ancient saying that today, young Master Jun would experience the 18th level of torture in hell. Seems like the young master, should become a legendary immortal. Jun Moxie was complacent. But it is a pity, as this cannot be spread, otherwise, the customs of this world will definitely change. Young Master Jun's scoldings were combined from 1,000 years ago, with words from the country and words from all around the world. It formed a specific text and flowed out. This allowed the people living in Xian mainland to experience reform. At least it transformed the boring concept of swearing in people, forming a diversity in the concept of swearing. This generation is filled with many masters, especially the young Master Jun. Though it did not hurt anymore, his whole body was still weak, still lying on the ground. He did not even have the strength to get up, not even the strength to move a little. Jun Moxie was scared for a moment. After all, the present him knew that it was very dangerous this time. Though he was scared, if he were to be given a second chance, he would still choose to do the same. Definitely without any regrets. Even if it meant that his soul would be lost, die and disappear. This is because the people here were his relatives, the people whom he cherished the most. As long as Jun Moxie, is still alive and breathing, whether it is the 3 holy places or the gods in heaven, no one should dare hurt them. At the very least, before they cross over my dead body, no one shall think of that. Jun Moxie bit his teeth and began to make his body open up the heaven and its power. He realized that Dantian was empty and not even one bit was left. The real people went up to explore the space and he tried to open the inner vision. The empty Dantian was like a desolate and barren land that was going to dry up. So selfish. Nothing was actually left for me. They should at least leave some moisture for me. Jun Moxie swallowed his saliva, closed his eyes, begun exerting his full strength to recover. However, he did not that if not for his crazy practice in alchemy, he would not be able to use the fusion borrowing. Gradually, his damaged meridians slowly started to go back to the empty Dantian. Jun Moxie began to carefully control this small bit of spiritual power in his body for a day, a week until his mind went blank. He continued with his second day. When he carried on till his 9th day, there was a sudden bang. The meridians, muscles, tendons, and in his bones, there was pure energy everywhere around his body. The airflow in his body became stronger each time and it was more powerful than the previous one. At the same time, the aura from the heavens and earth let out a shio sound. The tide went through his body and it rapidly transformed the tide into energy and it returned to Dantian. After a day, it became the purest spiritual energy. Whether intentionally or unintentionally, Jun Moxie entered the two spiritual realms. He only knew the crazy operation. Requests. The airflow of his meridian became stronger and his body's absorption of spiritual aura from Hongjun Pagoda was getting faster and faster. The rich aura of heaven and earth was endlessly produced in the Hongjun Pagoda and it visibly turned into white fog from Jun Moxie's pores around his body. How did Hongjun Pagoda exist? How did Jun Moxie easily get his requests answered? Jun Moxie managed to escape death this time. Dantian became absolutely dry. Even though it is clean, empty, it actually caused fear in Jun Moxie and caused him to tirelessly operate the open heavens power again and again, round and round. He did not seem to realize that the airflow in his meridians was slowly becoming a silver thin line. A colorful tower-like object appeared in front of his forehead, just like a forehead accessory hanging from the sky. This object started to become clear and slowly became authentic. It was rotating on Jun Moxie's forehead. Every time it rotated, it gave off a ray of sunshine just like a rainbow. Of course, Jun Moxie did not know of all of these that were happening. The present him was just like a 300-year-old ghost who died of hunger who suddenly saw a bowl of steamed bread, crazily absorbing the spiritual aura. Absorbing with no end and it is never satisfied even until it dies. With no idea how long it took, the little tower on his forehead began to stop rotating and it stopped 3 feet away from Jun Moxie's forehead. He finally reached his limit. Jun Moxie felt that the rate that he was absorbing the heaven and earth's aura was slowing down. It seemed as if it will no longer increase. At the same time, his body was in pain, and his head was pushed into a cotton. It bulged up and it seemed as if one touch would make it become a pit. Just at this moment, the meridians along his body suddenly stopped functioning. It was totally still. No matter how much he moved, he did not manage to let the air flow in one by one. How did this happen? Jun Moxie twisted his eyebrows and was about to check his situation, when suddenly, without warning, boom! The meridians in Jun Moxie's body suddenly exploded all around the surrounding areas. The silver airflow changed into a silvery bright dust, and suddenly disappeared. Please subscribe to this channel, so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 567. Breakthrough. The 4th level. Jun Moxie was shocked. An explosion also suddenly happened in his brain. Ah! Blood spurt out of Jun Moxie's nose and mouth simultaneously. He was in severe pain. It was as though his veins were shattered. Could it be that I have gone crazy and I am going to become a useless human? Just as this thought ran through his mind and before he could feel depressed, Jun Moxie realized his veins were just fine. While he was feeling confused, he suddenly realized that some pale gold fog had mysteriously appeared in his veins. The pale gold fog became more and more concentrated, gradually blocking the blood flow in his veins. Another boom happened. It shocked Jun Moxie, who yelled until he almost fainted. He urgently used his abilities to see what was happening inside his body. He then realized that the pale gold fog which appeared a while ago had disappeared without a trace. In its place was an extremely thin gold thread. It was as though a stream of gold water was swimming excitedly in his veins. Jun Moxie could clearly feel that the flow of the gold water encompassed an extraordinarily great strength. Compared to his standards, he was definitely nowhere close. If the original third level of spiritual power's silver thread could hold 100 pounds, then this gold thread could hold up a hill, or at least a ton, or possibly 10 tons. This was an astonishingly scary change. Maybe I broke through again. Once this thought ran through his mind, another rumble occurred in his mind again. It was as though an earthquake was taking place. He felt a pop at the front of his mind, seeming as though something cracked. Of course, Jun Moxie did not know that this sound was caused by the sudden explosion of the small tower which formed on his forehead the day before by the Earth's spiritual power. It evolved into a 7-colored gas and entered his head from his Baihui acupoint. Then, Jun Moxie felt the entire Hongyi Tower shake vigorously as though an earthquake was happening. He was lying on the floor but was thrown high up in the air. Luckily he was facing upwards, if not he would end up kissing the ground even though it was in the Hongyi Tower. Ugh! Jun Moxie busily flipped and stood up, avoiding a bad fall as he asked himself, "What is happening?" Just as he opened his eyes and looked forward, he tried to open his mouth but he could not speak. Around 10 feet in front of him was originally an empty tower, but it has disappeared. In its place was a door. An open door of 7 colors. Hongyi Tower's 4th level. He really, at this timing, broke through. Oh my! Endangering my life once and I broke through. Isn't this forcing me to endanger myself? Jun Moxie was in shock. I can only break through by endangering my life. It was like this the previous time and now again. Is life really so worthless? His thought did not end there and Jun Moxie finally could not resist and spouted. Where do I find so many lives to play with? Once or twice more and I would definitely kill myself. This is too torturous. Then again, Jun Moxie himself knew that breaking through was not achievable by just forsaking his life. After breaking through, even if he endangered himself 1,000 times, it was still not a given to break through again so quickly. Actually, during this period, Jun Moxie laid a pretty solid foundation for his breaking through. From Tiannan to breaking through to the 3rd level until then, it was not a long time of about 3 months since Jun Moxie was revived. Throughout his practicing process, it was already one of the slowest breakthroughs. Although the more advanced his Xian cultivation was, the slower it was for breakthroughs. Jun Moxie's breakthrough this time around was surprising yet not without logic. During his last alchemy, he unintentionally broke through the Sky Xian level to reach the Spirit Xian level. Jun Moxie originally thought he already broke through the opening the sky's 4th level of cultivation, but after some check then he realized that he did not. However, since then, Jun Moxie knew that although he did not break through, He was on the verge of it. All he needed was fate. He originally thought that it would take a while more to complete the breakthrough, but this time, Jun Moxie disregarded his own life, which was too dangerous. As the host of the Hongyi Tower, why did it allow Jun Moxie to lose his life? It was important to note that the Hongyi Tower was residing in Jun Moxie's body. They were inseparable. Although it was still not easy to transfer abilities, it was a clear case of direct implication. If Jun Moxie really died, then the Hongyi Tower would have to follow him to be reincarnated. Therefore, at the most crucial moment, the Hongyi Tower finally used its great powers again and pulled this reckless guy back at the last second before his spirit was eliminated, then helplessly gave him a major repair. However, this guy was not contented. While his veins were empty, he seized the opportunity and endangered himself once more, suicidally absorbed spiritual energy. Furthermore, he did it unconsciously. This was even more helpless. It just pulled this guy back from an explosion. Did he have to self-destruct once more? Master Jun was a lucky person. He was practicing not outside but in the Hongyi Tower, so when his internal spiritual energy was about to self-destruct, the Hongyi Tower would naturally compress it back. This compress directly brought about changes to the quantity, which changed the nature. Therefore, this breakthrough was both understandable and yet surprising. It was such a perfect combination of time, location, and persona. Without any of them, it would have been impossible. How rare. If the Hongyi Tower could hear Jun Moxie speak, endangering his life will help his breakthrough, and so he needs to endanger his life more. Regardless of how firm and rooted it was, it would most probably spit blood. This guy really did not have any self-love. Other than endangering his life, what else could he play with? Was he just endangering his life? It was endangering the tower too. Which previous hosts did not treat their body like treasure? Cherish it? All they feared was a slight injury. However, after staying in this guy's body, why did the tower never stop worrying? It had never seen anyone as reckless as this guy. He was not even Silver Xian and yet dared to mess with a Jade Xian. He just reached Gold Xian and dared to start messing with a Sky Xian. The tower overcame difficulties to reach the Jade Xian level, and yet now it had to compete with a Spirit Xian who was trying to play a fool with him. It would be lucky if he did not cause any trouble, but if he did, he may offend the two great powers of the north and south, the Silver City of Wind and Snow and the Bloody Soul Villa. After the journey to Tiannan, he painstakingly practiced and reached the Sky Xian standards, leveled up the mission, ready to fight the Paragon. Ignoring what had passed and just about what was happening, after reaching Spirit Xian a few back, the most epic action had begun. He directly fought 30 others of Paragon level or higher and 60 others practicing to reach Paragon level alone. A total of 90 top fighters. This big bunch of people threw themselves at him aggressively. Under such formation, if the Hongyi Tower could sweat, it would definitely sweat buckets for Jun Moxie. Sweat. Lots of sweat. A fountain of sweat. Drowned in sweat. Throughout the journey, all the battles jumped levels. Not just by 1 or 2 levels but 3, that extent of rapid progress. More recently, the number of levels jumped did not matter, all the battles were deadly. Comparing, for someone who just started practicing and had not laid a strong foundation to challenge experts from everywhere, that was putting his life on a thread, as though the life was not his but an enemy's. Even if he intentionally did it, it was not possible to be so accurate every time. Luckily, the tower was there. If not for the tower's help, this guy would have reincarnated more than 10 times, and yet he still dared to blurt out how endangering his life would lead to a breakthrough. The tower thought that if it could move, it would definitely give him a good scolding. It was not that it had not seen someone so thick-skinned, but someone as thick-skinned as him was rare. Did Master Jun Xie know these? He happily strolled and appreciated how he was blessed by a misfortune while he catwalked into the 4th level of the Hongyi Tower. In fact, it was as such, as he was so excited. Master Jun totally neglected the fact that he was still but naked, which caused his image to become slightly funny, dangling in front and shaking at the back, while he put on an arrogant expression which called for hate and undermined his personality. Actually, even if he remembered, the Master Jun at that time probably did not care. After all, only he was there, and again, Master Jun had super thick skin, and even if there were others around, he would still sway around like he did, with no need to elaborate on the details. Just another mankind. Master Jun whistled happily. This guy was a typical example of not learning his lesson. He just recovered and broke through, but he immediately forgot about the danger he had been through. His eyes were glistening. He had on an extremely lewd smile as he carried his long spear while entering. Once he entered, Jun Xie felt that something was different in there. In fact, very different from the 3rd level. Extremely different. The entire 4th level was a pretty chaotic scene from a chaotic world. Spiritual energy was concentrated and was aggressive. Some even lightly bumped into Jun Xie, and he could feel the power. How pure must the spiritual energy be to be able to create such a scene? There was not only these inside. Floating in the air were red flames, green water, and black. Anyways, there were all sorts of things. Jun Xie was stunned. He never thought that it would be such a situation on the 4th level. Before he could consider anything, suddenly, a 7-colored light sped past his eyes, and for no reason, several lines of chants appeared in his mind. The heart is beautiful, filled with will. Persevere. Uncertain actions are actually phantoms. Do not forget. The lotus throne is attainable. The soul and spirit will disappear. Not killing the fetus. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 568. New Power. Power of the 5 Elements. Jun Xie felt a sharp pain in his head and felt barely conscious. In a state of blurriness, he suddenly understood that the opening the sky's 4th level chants had barged into his mind. This was not rare, as he learnt the previous few levels in this way too. However, the next moment, everything was different. It was as though Master Jun's naked body became a black hole and suddenly gave off a scary and irresistible great strength of attraction. Abnormally, all the unstable elements in the 4th level instantly were tamed. Beginning from the green element, it rapidly entered Master Jun's body, then followed by the red, black. At the same time, what he absorbed was the violent yet substantial pure spiritual energy. Jun Xie clearly felt his vein beneath his eyes had become an endless ocean, crazily absorbing all sorts of energy and spiritual energy. Yet, once these energies entered his body, they disappeared immediately. Only the spiritual energy became more and more concentrated and more aggressively entered his body, forming endless trails. As his veins were so flooded, he naturally quickly grew stronger, and even his diaphragm seemed to be strengthened by the support of the gold airflow. Gradually, the gold spiritual energy in Jun Xie's body flooded his diaphragm again and again. By then, it was not just airflow, but it was real substance. Abnormally concentrated substance. Not knowing how long more. Finally, the moment the spiritual energy in his veins stopped moving, the surging spiritual energy which originally was in the 4th level had already been absorbed cleanly. New spiritual energy flooded in and slowly filled up the 4th level once more, but it was already calm. Jun Moxie's body stopped automatically absorbing anything. Even when he purposely tried to absorb something, there was no effect at all. This was because his body was completely filled already. Quietly, Jun Moxie's extremely full diaphragm started to move slowly. This time it compressed tightly. The more compressed it was, the smaller the solidified gold spiritual energy became. The large amount of energy in his veins was absorbed bit by bit, helping the compression in the diaphragm. Finally, the solidified gold spiritual energy became a golden pearl of the size of an infant's fist, spinning at an unimaginable high speed while absorbing spiritual energy. Suddenly, when it's spinning the fastest it had been, it unexpectedly came to a complete stop. Following closely, Jun Moxie felt his entire body's muscles contract and an indescribable feeling emerged. From the top of his head, an extremely cold stream flowed down from his baihui acupoint to his governing vessel, then downward strongly to beneath his feet. From the yongquan acupoint at the bottom of his feet, a warm current surged in the opposite direction through his conception vessel and ended at his baihui acupoint. His body shook violently as that two streams of spiritual energy, one cold and one warm, suddenly they started colliding at the intersection of his governing and conception vessels. Jun Moxie moaned in pain as he felt that another mysterious door had opened in his body. The cold and warm streams quickly perfectly blended together. His body felt slightly cooling, a very pleasing feeling. At the same time, the newly solidified golden pearl in the diaphragm shattered silently. Jun Moxie observed what was happening in his body and was shocked. What was that? Suddenly, in Jun Moxie's diaphragm, appeared a small baby about the size of an infant's fist. Its entire body was red, complete with 4 limbs, 5 senses, brows, and eyes, slightly tender, pretty pleasing to the human eye as it sat with its eyes closed. It seemed like it was breathing. What? I am pregnant. Jun Moxie yelled in shock as his entire body's hair stood up. Pregnant without s**x, how even, the second Jesus is about to be born. This idiotic immortal actually treated an immortal's cultivated baby as him being pregnant. Once again, he showed how there was no bottom line for intelligence. At that point in time, Jun Moxie unexplainably felt gold rays of light shining in front of his eyes. Unknowingly, an entire piece of words congregated together appeared. Jun Moxie was elated as it seemed like the returns this time around was not small. Calmly, he finished reading the words in one breath until his face darkened. Until the end, he uncontrollably scolded. Why don't you tell me directly in 4 words, this is immortal cultivation? That's all that's needed. How dare you happily throw me tens of thousands of words? Do you think I'm an idiot? However, he did not know that without this essay of words, he would really be an idiot for a longer time than an idiot. Seems like this extra return was given to him by the Hongjun Pagoda as it could not bear to watch further, in hope of enlightening him as a form of pity for this little idiot. Yes, it is exactly like children's enlightenment books. Other than introduction is more introduction, nothing interesting. Jun Moxie grumbled. Just teach me how to wipe out the earth would work too. The best are those charming eye techniques in legends so that whenever I meet a pretty girl, all I need to do is stare at her and she'll hopelessly fall in love with me and only want to marry me. How nice would that be? Ha 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 ha. Jun Moxie ended up laughing lewdly. Master Jun finished complaining and officially began to look through his gains. Wow! It was indeed satisfying. The power of water, fire, and earth. At the same time, a relatively short paragraph of chants appeared in his mind. Treat gold and woods as the foundation, water and fire of the same source, earth as a virtue, As all 5 elements, the strength of the 5 elements, are unbelievable, remain until the end and all will end in chaos. After a look, Jun Moxie seemed to understand it but not really too. However, Jun Moxie understood something clearly: he had gotten lucky. He really made it rich. Starting from the 3rd level, he had been in contact with the powers of the 5 elements, but now, he finally gathered all of them. All 5 elements: gold, wood, water, fire and earth. What strength of water and fire! If they all had the same strength as the power of gold, then it would be hard to not have made it rich. No matter who annoyed him, he could immediately break his bones. He carefully felt the strength within his body. Jun Moxie could clearly feel that it was very different. If he used the division of Xian practitioner's abilities, then knew his abilities were no longer of a normal spirit Xian. After he broke through, he was of the Grand Master's abilities and had even exceeded the 5th realm of spirit Xian. That also meant that it was the 1st realm of a Grand Master. However, as to exactly which stage, Jun Moxie had no clue, as there was no comparison. But now, Jun Moxie started to ponder over something else. It was because he finally knew that what he was practicing was the purest and most superior immortal dermic formulation. That meant that it was almost confirmed that he would be able to achieve longevity. Hehe. This guy's only impression if practicing to become an immortal was confined only to longevity. If so, what about his relatives? It would be tough after tens and hundreds of years, as he would be the only one left alive after his relatives die one by one, and even the prettiest girls would become skeletons. Dang! Is this immortal cultivation or torture? To be separated from 1 or 2 people by death was already so painful. How about being left all alone? Would I have to repeatedly go through separation? Even if I lived till 800 years old, with 10 generations of descendants of my bloodline, I will only recognize them and not know them. This won't do. I have to change the possibility of this happening. Jun Moxie pondered over it seriously, as this was not a small issue and so he could not make a decision rashly. However, how could he do it? Master Jun Stark nakedly stayed in the Hongjun Pagoda in a daze, thinking of a way while the outside world was in chaos looking for him. That was because Jun Moxie had gone missing for 3 days and nights. His disappearance duration was unnecessarily too long, especially after that huge change a while back. It made the rest uneasy, and in the end, even Jun Wuyi, who had a lot of confidence in Jun Moxie, also started to panic. Old Master Jun seemed as though everything was as per normal, but inside, he was already panicking. His only grandson was missing. What could he do? Maybe he was caught by the people from the 3 holy cities. Mei Shuayan used her powers to adjust her breathing for a night only, and before she had recovered, she was already out and about searching for Jun Moxie. Although was 80% sure that Jun Moxie had to face immense backlash and was somewhere recuperating now, or perhaps had already been blown into smoke. However, she still kept a small bit of hope that by finding the gathering location of the 3 holy cities, she could monitor them closely. She hoped that she could find some traces of Jun Moxie here, although the results might not be ideal, but at least he was alive. Based on her outstanding ability to take flight, she naturally did not have to worry about being found out. As time passed day after day, Mei Shuayan grew more and more hopeless. She was on the verge of breaking down and grew increasingly murderous. Even when she saw the normal people of Tianxiang City, she could not cover up her murderous look. This was the usual thought of wanting to destroy the entire world. All these while, Mei Shuayan only focused on winning battles and focused on practicing. waiting to complete her mission even if it meant that she had to kill many people, as she did not regret but instead felt it was a form of glory. A historically grand form of glory. To her, she never thought about anything else. About relationships. It was only a joke to her and even just a myth to appreciate. Mei Shuiyan never believed that anything in this world could touch her heart. Mei Shuiyan was an extremely stubborn person, and just based on how she disregarded any threat to her life and insist on her own ideals, it was not difficult to realize this. At the same time, she was also an arrogant and prideful woman. Just like a lone lotus flower on a glacier, she did not crave for anyone's appreciation but still bloomed lonely with her own unique beauty, as though no one could rival her beauty. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 569. Shuiyan's Heart. Up till now, no one is able to witness my elegant demeanor. But of course, that's how it was supposed to be. How could mortals be worthy to see my unique form? It'd only be a form of blasphemy if they were able to. Even a spirit Xian and or supreme expert was nothing more than a power-hungry man without talent. What kind of person am I, Mei Shuiyan, to be associated with such people? The plum blossom in the snow. How many could you find in the world? All heroes in history were like this. They came and went alone. She was like the one and unique bright moon in the 9 heavens. Once appeared, the stars would dim themselves as they were not worthy to be beside her. She could only look at the changes of others while fulfilling her duty. After all these years, she had never felt emotions, as her heart was always as calm as water. Even if she was being hunted down, Mei Shuiyan would still be able to maintain an indifferent attitude. However, this cold yet graceful lady got her peace disturbed by young Master Jun. Furthermore, her peace was broken in a barbaric and almost perverted act that almost deflowered Mei Shuiyan's pure body. Although it was during her tiny Xian beast true form, Mei Shuiyan was overwhelmed with anger and shame. What an insult! It was back when they were in Tianfa Forest. Jun Moxie did not even spend half an hour before unknowingly stirring the emotions that were resting deep in Mei Shuiyan's heart. Shame. This brought ultimate shame to her. Anger. She was burning with anger. Hatred. Full of hatred. However, there was nothing that could be done. This was because Mei Shuiyan had no idea how to deal with Jun Moxie. No matter how strong the hatred, Jun Moxie was healing her. Thus, she owed him a great debt of gratitude. Above all, Jun Moxie definitely had relations with the mysterious man that snatched the Fa Tian fruit. The Fa Tian fruit was the key to the future for the Tianfa forest. Mei Shuiyan was lost and confused. What should I do? Just forget it? I am not willing to do so. Should I kill him? No. Cripple him? No way. While deep in her thoughts, she followed Jun Moxie all the way to Tianxiang Empire. After interacting with him further, Mei Shuiyan thought she could put this behind her and forgive Mo Jun Xie. However, he violated her again. And most importantly, it was when Mei Shuiyan was in her human form. This man actually kissed her and spanked her butt. This lecher. As Mei Shuiyan wondered about her mixed feelings, the load on her mind got heavier. When they arrived in the Jun family, she could see the hard work of Jun Moxie. She did not question how the spirit pills were made, but she knew that if it weren't for Jun Moxie, there would be no spirit pills. Jun Moxie was the key to everything. But what kind of person was Jun Moxie? Mei Shuai-yen knew the answer. She knew it very well. He was definitely an evil man. Nowhere near a gentleman. The heavenly battle that Mei Shuai-yen cared for the most was worth nothing in his eyes. The lives of the world were not of his concern. However, while he might not be a great man, he was sincere and pure. He was not a hypocrite, but a straightforward man. He believed his destiny was in his hands and not with heaven. Money could not change what he was going to do. He could destroy an evil underground organization for a girl that he did not know. He could also go against the world for someone he cares for. He was also able to use bloody and cruel methods to purge a group of reputable men. He did not bother about their past, be it good or bad. In this world, Jun Moxie cared about no one else besides his family. He was not a hero nor a formidable person. He wasn't even a gentleman. This was because he was a villain, true villain that follows his heart. Jun Moxie had played his role well. A member of the Jun family, the grandson of Jun Xie, nephew of Jun Wu Yi, son of Jun Wu Hui, a man that Du Gu Xiao Yi admires, the man of Guan Qing Han, the brother of Tang Yuan and the main pillar of the Jun family. He was Jun Moxie. This was all part of Jun Moxie's identity. However, he would never admit that he was a citizen of the Tianxiang Empire, and he would never consider himself as one. I am who I am, one and only. I am just me. I would not change for anyone or anything. When I want to be rakish, I'm rakish. When I want to be a gangster, I'm a gangster. When I want to act dumb, I acted dumb. When I want to flirt, I flirt. When I want to kill, I pull out my sword. When I want to scold someone, I opened my mouth. This was how a genuine person should be like. Follow your feelings, your heart and your mind. He never bothered about what the world thinks and he doesn't care about what's written in history. They can all go screw themselves. Just scram to the side. He did what he wanted and followed his heart. That is Jun Moxie. A man like that would never be so generous unless there were special reasons. Spirit pills after pills. Giving legendary weapons without any hesitation. Unless you could move his heart, who in the world would be able to get any benefits from Jun Moxie? As Jun Moxie gave more, Mei Shuai-yen increasingly opened up to him. What she cared for was no longer the spirit pills or legendary weapons, but the red eyes and tiredness when Jun Moxie arrived. All for the moment he arrived. However, she never spoke of it. She never mentioned how happy she felt every time he arrived. Despite feeling shy and embarrassed, she could also feel joy. Because Mei Shuai-yen could feel with her clear heart that Jun Moxie never wanted her to be worried. Not even a single bit. He was willing to carry all the pain and sufferings. He slowly digested every single bit of it, but on the surface, he showed that the pain and sufferings didn't bother him. Despite being a few times stronger than him in abilities, he was willing to stand in front of Mei Shuai-yen and face all the problems. He had the ability to move the clouds and give her a clear sky. Facing the downfall of Tianfa Forest and the suppression from the three holy cities, her broken heart magically healed and was filled with hope. During this time, Mei Shuai-yen had subconsciously gotten used to the happy days. Even though Jun Moxie was much weaker, he had given Mei Shuai-yen an odd yet strong feeling. As long as he was present, there was nothing to be worried about. She just had to wait and everything will be settled. It was during these days and times when they were together that this young man had become the only support of Mei Shuai-yen's life even without her knowing. As the days passed, Mei Shuai-yen was used to the presence of Jun Moxie. She was used to him making decisions, used to showing him her feminine side, used to his jokes, his attitude, his voice, his breath and him. Back then, Jun Moxie was always by her side and Mei Shuayan was not aware of what was happening. But now, Jun Moxie had disappeared, she saw it with her own eyes. He just vanished. It was at this moment that Mei Shuayan's heart became flooded with great pain. This feeling was so sudden, so sharp. She felt as though her heart was hit by a sledgehammer. And when she saw the sudden explosion on Jun Moxie's body, Mei Shuayan felt like her insides were burning. Me. This was all because of me. This was the first time Mei Shuayan cried in her life. She could feel the saltiness of her tears and the pain in her heart. Guilt, self-blame, sadness, despair. These emotions flooded Mei Shuayan's mind. If I didn't come to the Jun family, if I did not force him to refine the pills, if I did not reveal my true identity, the 3 holy cities wouldn't have sent such great force. 30 beyond Supreme Masters and 60 Supreme Masters. What kind of lineup was it when it consists of 90 strong individuals? And the clear objective was to deal with the people from Tianfa Forest. Just when I was about to give up, he appeared and saved me. If I didn't swear to kill Yue Ban, he would not force himself to kill one of the strongest men that was beyond supreme. In order to fulfill the promise, he was willing to go through all the danger. That scumbag Yue Ban was done, but he himself disappeared. Jun Moxie disappeared and Mei Shuayan had finally understood her heart. But it was all too late. Too late? Was it really too late? That night, Mei Shuayan cried for almost half that night. She cried silently with her broken heart. The familiar presence, comfort, jokes, and laughter were no longer by her side. Most importantly, she did not feel safe anymore. She had nothing to look forward to, nothing to wish for. Nothing is left anymore. Everything became black and white to her now. Mei Shuayan finally realized that she could not live without this man. Without him, the world would be dull and boring. The 3 holy cities were nothing compared to him. The heavenly battle was not that important after all. The future is not significant. All of these, what has it got to do with me? I just want him to be alive. As long as he can come back to me. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 570. Emotions. If he was dead, then I'd naturally become number 1 in this world, but what was the point of that? And so what if I could win the heavenly battle? There are many people in the world that deserve to die but are still alive. Why can't he be saved too? Why? Those who were supposed to die stayed on, while those that weren't supposed to disappear disappeared. For those that are alive and kicking, are you worthy of it? What rights were you entitled for Mei Shuayan to work and fight for you? In the end, you just backstabbed me and hurt me over and over again. The person that I cared most for will no longer be around. Why should I care for you people? And who would care for us? 3 holy cities. Since you are so vicious and you left me with no choice. I, Mei Shuayan, hereby swear that I will not leave you with any afterpaths. Even if all the beasts and creatures in Tianfa Forest die, I vow to take this revenge till I succeed. 3 days had passed and Mei Shuayan was filled with despair. Over the past 3 days, she had listened into the conversations between the 3 holy cities' people. Apparently, they did not capture Jun Moxie, and in fact, they did not even have the intention to. The explosion was so strong that even the strong Mei Shui-yen could not even survive, let alone Jun Moxie. There was no explanation for what was happening. When Mei Shui-yen returned back, she was filled with anger from head to bottom. Her deep killing intent could even be felt by the Snake King Qian Sun, who did not dare to utter a word. Mei Shui-yen had made up her mind. If there was still no news by nightfall, then Mei Shui-yen and Snake King Qian Sun would run through the entire Tianfa forest. From Tiannan to the South Sea, they would unite all the Xian beasts and advance into the three holy cities. They would then fight till their last breath. Their three holy cities were extremely powerful, but it didn't have many people. At the very most, there were only a few thousands of them. On the other hand, there were at least millions and billions of Xian beasts. Even if Mei Shui-yen didn't recruit the help of high-leveled Xian beasts, the large numbers of low-leveled Xian beasts would still be enough to overcome the three holy cities. Among the low-leveled beasts and creatures, there were the bees, snakes, ants and wolves. Just these few beast types would already amount to a terrifying number and give the three holy cities a run for their money. There was no need to talk about larger beasts like lions, monkeys, and bears. There were even aerial-type beasts like eagles. Although the individual strengths of the three holy cities' troops were way beyond those of Tianfa Forest, the combined strength of Tianfa Forest was completely on a different level from the three holy cities. Mei Shui-yen, by herself, would never be confident to win the three holy cities. However, Mei Shui-yen was sure that she could destroy the three holy cities with her current power. This was also the reason why the three holy cities wanted to destroy Tianfa Forest. As she approached the door, Mei Shui-yen took light and baby steps. She was afraid of returning back to the house, which was filled with his breath and his smell. It would break her heart. But, at the same time, she also yearned to return and be reminded of his unique and unforgettable scent. As she stood there, a feeling of weakness hit her. She felt an immense pain in her heart and tears flowed out of her eyes. She murmured, "After today, I am really leaving. If I am unable to win the three holy cities, I would never return. If you are lonely, please wait for me till I take revenge for you. Then I will accompany you." Moxie. This was the first time that this name was uttered so tenderly. Mei Shui-yan's heart wrenched and tears flowed past her cheeks like a heavy downpour. If only all this was just a dream. Why does one have to experience it to understand and know that she cannot do without him? Who is this lady? Calling out my name in this romantic tone. I am quite shy, and after you called out my name, my legs went jelly. Suddenly, a flirtatious voice with a tint of evilness sounded. Mei Shui-yen shook and she was shocked. She slowly turned her body as she was afraid that if she did it too fast, the voice would disappear. Though this might be a dream, she hoped that she would wake up later, or even not wake up at all. As she slowly turned and looked over, with her eyes filled with tears, she saw him. Jun Moxie looked back with a funny expression on his face. Mei Shui-yen was stunned. She could not react. She had used her hands to clean her tears and attempted to clear her vision by rubbing her eyes. She could not believe what she was seeing and she did not trust her eyes. "Hello." Jun Moxie smiled and waved in front of Mei Shui-yen. He said, "Wow, who is this crying kitty cat? I do not recognize it." Mei Shui-yen stood still and looked at Jun Moxie. Mei Shui-yen burst out in laughter. But after a while, she let out her tears once again. She dashed into Jun Moxie's arms and held him tightly as if she was trying to enter his body. After some time, She finally came out of Jun Moxie's embrace. She looked closely at his face and realized that this was not a dream. She took out her fists and punched him. However, she suddenly brought him close again. She hugged him as though he was a precious gem that she lost earlier. Jun Moxie wondered what happened to Mei Shuiyan and why her emotions were unstable. He wondered if his powers had improved so greatly that a beauty would throw herself willingly to him. Jun Moxie thought that it was still a good thing that a beauty threw herself to him voluntarily. However, he could feel that Mei Shuiyan's body shaking, and it was obviously the aftermath of extreme fear and shock. Jun Moxie thought, what could have happened to her to cause her so much fear and shock? But no matter what happened, this should not be the reaction when reuniting with him. Guan Qinghan and Snake King Qian Sun dashed out of the house. The two of them had also been anxious and nervous over the past few days. When Jun Moxie appeared, they were so excited that they wanted to rush out and hug him tightly. But just as they saw how tightly Jun Moxie and Mei Shuiyan were hugging, a strange light flashed across the two ladies' eyes. They silently stood at a distance, looking at the two of them. There were inexplicable feelings in their hearts: sourness, comfort, happiness, and even a hint of disappointment. Mei Shuiyan relieved herself from all her emotions and she pulled herself away from Jun Moxie's embrace. She instantly regained her cool form, but her swollen eyes didn't match her cool form. Mei Shuiyan acted strong and cool. Her face turned red and then white. She felt uncomfortable and shy. She demanded, "Where have you been for the past few days? Do you know everyone was worried about you? How could you be so irresponsible?" Jun Moxie touched his head and reached his hand towards Mei Shuiyan's forehead. He wondered, "Mei, are you okay? Are you sick?" Mei Shuiyan turned furious immediately and she swiped his hands away and shouted, "Speak! Where have you been over the past 2 days?" Jun Moxie's face turned bitter. He had just returned from Old Master Jun and third uncle, and he had already been interrogated twice solemnly. He didn't think that he would have to face another interrogation. Was he doomed to face the fate of a criminal today? What a sad day. Jun Moxie could only repeat what he had already said twice. Actually, Mei Shuiyan didn't even need to know where Jun Moxie had been over the past 2 days. Did she even need to ask? He was definitely trying to heal his injuries. The only reason why she asked this question was that she needed an excuse to talk to him. As for how he answered, it wasn't even important to her. To her, what was most important was that he was still alive. That was enough. If he wasn't alive, then she would ensure that the entire world accompanies him. This story will be continued to chapter 571. For those of you who are not subscribed yet, please subscribe. The interesting and best stories will be updated. See you again in the next episode.